and welcome to another episode of the Modco Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Modco Podcast. Today, I am super excited about the guest that we have on here. Have you ever thought about who would play you in a movie or what genre your life would be? Our guest today is a screenwriter who's actually written an award-winning screenplay based on her life. Not the fun parts that people like to brag about online, but the gritty parts where hard lessons are learned. Jaclyn Whitt is here to share how our difficult seasons can become stories of inspiration. So everyone, let's please welcome Jaclyn Whitt. She is also the education coordinator at Family Friendly Screenwriting Academy. Welcome, Jaclyn. How are you?
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. Doing great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. So before we get started, is there anything else that you would like to share with my audience about yourself or your business or anything?
Well, I currently live in Mexico, but I travel all over the place. My husband and I are empty nesters now, and so we are all in with the business. Yeah, my youngest is 19, and he's moved out, and so this is where I get to really dive into, the things that have been on my heart and mind for years that I was pursuing, but only slightly because I was still raising my family. And so, this is where I'm really excited. So I understand, not everybody can be as all in as what I am, but just so you know, I am so all about screenwriting and mentoring people and building this business. It's been fantastic.
I'm so excited to talk to you because I don't think I've ever actually talked to a screenwriter in just my everyday life. So to have one on the podcast, that's definitely something different. How long have you been in entrepreneurship?
Okay, so my husband and I launched our business, Family Friendly Screenwriting Academy, in January 2023. So that is not that long ago. This is September right now. So 9 months, I guess?
Right.
That we've been doing this. As far as, being a freelance writer, that has been going on for a couple years now. So I won my first award about 2 years ago. Yeah. And then it was about a year and a half ago, a little less than that, actually, that I ended up having my first screenplay optioned, which is the first step to having it purchased. Because what happens is a producer, when they want to produce something, they basically they make an arrangement with the screenwriter to take their screenplay off the market so that the producer has time. And they talk it's in the contract how long that time is in order to get organized so that they can then purchase the film and move forward on it. So for that one, it's a 2-year contract where the producers have 2 years in order to get all of the things in place, the funding, get the casting, attach any kind of directors or lawyers, everything that's necessary to produce a movie. They get all of that organized within that time frame, and then they can go into production. And so then when they're ready to go into production and the budget is set, that's when I get paid out, because I get paid a percentage of what it costs to make the movie.
2 questions that I just thought about. So you said a 2-year contract. Is that standard, or is that just what your contract was?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, because it's all dependent on what you negotiate within the contract. So I negotiated the 2 years, but it could be anywhere from 6 months to 5 years. Well, you have this contract that you can't, it's a contract. You can't get out of it. Right. You have to wait it out. So yeah, making sure when you go into the contract that it's something that you can live with.
That makes sense. And then you also said the part about the percentage, that you don't get the percentage until everything goes through, until that either that contract time frame is up or everything goes through and they have everything in place. So this whole 2 years, year and a half, however long it takes, you can just be waiting that time and you get paid absolutely nothing. There's no holding fee or anything like that.
That's a great question. So yeah, it's called an option. So it's an option fee. It is like a holding fee. So yeah. Okay. So what they do is they give me a certain percentage of the money that would be the expected amount of what I would get paid. So it's typically about 10% of what they think I'll end up getting based on what they think the budget would be. So then they give me that amount of money, and then that means I take it off the market for the time that we agreed on. And then during that time, they get organized. But the thing with a film budget is that it goes kind of a little bit up and a little bit down, where they're trying to figure out how much it's going to cost to make this thing. Some of it depends on what actors are going to be involved. Because, like, let's say if you're going to go with B-list actors, that's not going to cost as much as if you go with an A-list actor or
Right.
two, whatever. Like, that's going to really bump the cost up. And so the ones for that particular one, they're actually wanting to pursue having at least one A-list actor in it. And so then that means that they're working with a larger budget. But if they can't do that, then they're going to bump it down and work with B-list actors. And instead of going to the theater, they'll go to either television or streaming. And so right now it's like what I can earn on it fluctuates depending on, are they going to get this actor or not? Because that means, like, are they going to make a $2 million movie or a $5 million movie?
Got you. And so then with the percentage that they give to you up front, is that your money to keep whether it goes through or not? Or do you have to like give a portion of it back if it doesn't go through?
I don't have to give any of it back because they're giving me that money to take it off the market. So I took it off that market for 2 years. Even if I end up getting my script back to go shop it to a different producer, I took the money off. I mean, I took the script off for the time frame, and therefore I fulfilled my end of that contract.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was just wondering like how that worked, because you hear sometimes with like upfront payments and stuff that people get like upfront payments and then they'll end up spending all the money and now they have to pay back a certain amount or something like that. When you touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to circle back to it. You said about an award-winning screenplay that you wrote. Is this one that you got the award for 2 years ago?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And it
Can you
was
tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I wrote it based on a time in my life. That was in the introduction. So now during that time, I had children and I went through a divorce. And so really it would have made sense that I would have needed my parents during that time. But like I said, we did not have a good relationship. Also around that time, I got a job working in a prison teaching life skills. It's like, wait, where are you going with this? Like, this is, which means I'm going to be stretched. So in this scenario, the only people really that could watch my kids so that I could go to work were my parents. And so I was forced into a situation where I had to interact with them, and I had to humble myself. And my parents did also. Like, we all had to work on this together to figure out how do we restore this relationship. But we did it, through the power of God, and we humbled ourselves to this process. It was worth telling the story because, I think a lot of the time people, it's difficult, like in the moment when you need to have some space because maybe the relationship, it might be toxic in the moment and you're dealing with other things, but then when things come around where you're ready to actually deal with reconciling a relationship and dealing with the past hurts and, addressing all of that, like, how do you even approach it? Right. And so this is where I really thought, like, if people understood that when you work through this process with God, of course it's not easy, but it is possible. And then it's incredible because my kids got to have grandparents. They did not have that on their their father's side.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they wouldn't have had grandparents at all had I not reconciled with my parents.
Amazing. That's awesome. And that's just so cool that you felt comfortable enough and that you were vulnerable enough to even write about that. And then you won an award for it. So congratulations. And
Thank
that's
you.
amazing. You're welcome.
Yeah. I went on to win actually 13 awards for that one.
Oh, okay. Awesome. And so you said it was a screenplay. So is it like out in a movie that people can actually watch or?
Not yet. That is the one where I actually was speaking with the producers earlier today, and they have an A-list actor that they are waiting to hear back from because he wanted to read it and potentially take on one of the roles. So we're waiting to hear back on that. But that's where we're at right now, is just figuring out those details and then hopefully heading into production soon. Yeah. But if people want to follow the process, like if they want to follow along with where we're at, you can go on Facebook and look for the page called Solitary Refinement Movie. Kind of like a play on words, solitary confinement, but this is about refinement.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
And I will definitely make sure to link it in the show notes as well so that people can follow along if they're interested in it. So I'm definitely going to go follow because I love like the behind the scenes stuff and just knowing how things work and seeing something from start to finish. So I'm definitely going to make sure that I follow that. So another thing that you told me about when you filled out my guest form is that you actually write for a sitcom. Can you share what sitcom that is?
Yes. So that one is called Fade Away.
Okay.
And it's a new one. It's actually, the pilot is in post-production right now. So there's a couple stages of film development. So there's the development, which is where you're like, getting the story developed and all of that. And then there's the pre-production where you're getting organized. That's where my other movie is at right now. And then there's production where you're filming, and then post-production where it's already been filmed, it's just getting edited, and then it's going to be marketed and distributed. Okay. So right now we are in post-production on that one, but it's called Fade Away. I think there's actually a Facebook group for that one also. Okay. I don't know if it's a group or page with Deanna Lane.
Okay, cool. Yep. And I will make a note of that in the show notes as well. Right. So now you talked about like the process, like post-production, pre-production. Do you have a favorite part of the process that really gets you excited?
Well, I am like all about the development part of it, because as a screenwriter, that's where my job is. Because basically, once I'm done with the writing and then a producer says, hey, I want to do that, and then we have this contract where I'm handing over the rights to it, that means that my job is pretty much finished. I mean, sometimes I'm able to write into the contract that if they need any rewrites, they're going to contact me so that I can take care of that for them so that they don't bring in other writers. But some won't even want to go for that. They're just like, no, you just leave it with me. I'll take it from here. And so as a screenwriter, you have to put all of your heart into writing that screenplay and then send it off into the world and just, you got to let it go. You got no hold on it after that.
Okay, so kind of like having kids, it's like people say you raise them the best that you can, and when they go off in the world, you just pray that they remember everything that you taught them, and they're in God's hands now. So.
Yeah. And that's why I tell people, like, okay, so when you write your screenplay, you don't just shop it around to every producer that you can find. You find the producer that already has the same heart that you were pursuing when you wrote that. If they have the same audience, they have that same mindset, like that is where they're going anyway. You pitch it to them, because then they're going to see your project and be like, I get it. I get your vision. I'm on it. Let's do this.
Okay, that makes sense, because if you're writing a story about your life or about reconciling, you don't want to pitch it to a producer who's into making action films or who's into, making horror flicks or something like that, because those two just aren't going to mesh together. A question that I'm sure everyone has been waiting for: how does one get into screenwriting? Like, well, how did you get into it? And how would someone else get into it?
Okay, yeah. So for me, it turns out when I was 11, a friend of mine invited me to write a script with her. And I don't even know if we were thinking about it for stage or screen or what, but we just were writing the script. And after a couple weeks or so, I mean, we were 11, so she moved on to something else, and I ended up keeping the notebook. And every now and then I would come across it and I'd look at the script and I'd, kind of write some more on it. And over my teen years, I discovered that writing a script form of storytelling was something I really enjoyed. And it's kind of the way my brain worked. Like, my brain really liked characters and dialogue as a way to tell the story, rather than all the paragraphs that you see. Like, when you look at a novel, and it might be part of, I'm pretty sure it's part of how my ADHD brain works. Like, when I look at a novel and it's just like words and paragraphs, and like my brain is like, oh, I can't, like, it looks like it's gonna be so much work to read this. But when you look at a script, yeah, there's words on the page, but there's a lot of white on the page. There's not nearly as many words. And so it was like less intimidating for me to read. And so I just kind of, something, I guess, I connected with the style of it. And so then whenever I wanted to write something, like, especially if there was something I needed to get closure on, and it's just like, it's not always healthy to go back to a situation or a person or whatever to try to sort things out. And so some things I had to just process on my own. And so I used writing as a way to do that. I even did that even into my adult years. Like, in my early 20s, I had an idea that I wanted to work on, but I need to learn how to write a movie. And thankfully, the internet was out by then. And so I was
Yes.
able to research. And so, yeah, I just, whenever my kids were sleeping, I'd research online how to do it, and I'd work on it. And basically 5 days a week, every day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my kids went down for their nap, and I would go and work on my screenplay. And it took me 2 years to finish my first one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I love how you said that thankfully the internet was around, because I could just, technology is like a great thing and a bad thing, because like you said, I can just hop on the internet and look this up, versus if it wasn't out, you would have had to take your kids with you to the library or something like that to try to do everything and figure everything out. I love that it kind of just started off as a joke between you and your friends. Just, we're kind of bored for the moment, we need something to do. And
No, I haven't. I sent her a message on Facebook maybe like a year or so ago, like after when my first screenplay was optioned, and I realized like it all started with her. And so I sent her a message and, kind of told her where I was at, and that, I was really thankful that I know she wasn't intending to like set me on a course for my life or anything, but I just wanted
right.
her to know that she played a big role in it and that I was thankful.
Oh, cool. That's so awesome. That was really sweet of you. I was just wondering if you two still talked, or if she knew what a big role she had played in your life.
Yeah. Okay. So when I was studying screenwriting, like over the last, 7 years or so, I've been taking courses. And it just seems like every time I sign up for a course and I start taking it, I'm always assigned to watch movies or television shows, depending on what it is I'm studying. And this is really important to do, because you learn by watching and dissecting and then understanding how does this actually, all work? How did they bring this together and all of that? But the problem is that I kept getting assigned to watch shows that were outside of my value system. And I didn't appreciate the fact that in order to learn this, the curriculum, I would have to compromise my values. And so I thought, well, there's got to be a better way. So that's one of the things that over the years I would talk to my husband about, and so then when it came time that, the kids were growing up and moving out, and we knew that we were heading into this new phase where it was just going to be the two of us, we started talking about what can we pursue. And we decided we wanted to build this business, and, that we would be able to provide education opportunities. It doesn't matter. It's not like it's just for faith-based, but the point is that as we are teaching, put somebody in a position to feel like they're compromising their value system. So there's not going to be assignments to watch anything that has like nudity or foul language or gore. Like violence is one thing, gore is another, and stuff like this. So things like that, where it's I guess we're just thinking beyond more than just a skill, and thinking about like, I have a responsibility if I'm going to be in leadership, that I'm not just responsible to teach information. I'm responsible to care for the process.
Okay. So I like that. That's good, because that's something that I will hear, like a lot of times a lot of actors and actresses will say, is that they won't take on certain roles because it goes against their values, or that they've had to turn down roles, or that maybe because they turn down roles, now they don't get offered as many roles, or they have like certain things in their contract. Like I know there's this one actor, I cannot think of his name, but he was like, he had it in his contract where he wouldn't like kiss anyone because he's married. And then I watched a show that he was on, and I was like, oh, and he was married on the show, but I was like, they actually never did kiss on the show. And I was like, okay, it makes sense now. So that's cool that you all are doing something where you want to learn this, we can teach this, but you don't have to compromise yourself to go into the field that you want to go into, or learn the skill that you want to learn. So
yeah, exactly. And actually, I'm friends with a lot of actors, and it's the same thing. A lot of my friends who are actors, who are also believers, they have very, very specific boundaries. And it's different depending, like each person has developed their own boundaries that they feel like, okay, this, I'm good with this, I'm not good with that, And so as I'm talking with a lot of them and realizing like, okay, so if I want to work in this faith-based area, which I do definitely want to write several faith-based films, and so then that means I need to keep that in mind also. It's not just about writing a great story. I need to write in a way that I am not going to exclude people that want to work within their own boundaries. So for example, there are a lot of people, faith-based actors, that do not want to kiss anyone who is not their spouse, or even if they're not married, they do not want to kiss somebody who is married to someone else.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, keeping that in mind, a lot of the time when I write certain scenes, there are ways to write scenes that imply things happening, but you don't actually see them happening. Yeah. And so when you learn how to do that, where you can actually keep your actor in mind and not just the characters in the story, then that's going to actually, you're going to come up with deeper storylines at that point. Because let's say, for example, I always use this example. Okay. So if I want to write a story and the main character happens to be a stripper, I do not actually have to show her at work, because here's the thing. She is a whole person. She is not just the job she does. So there's a lot going on in her life. We can understand that that's what she's doing for her work,
Right.
but we are actually getting to know her on a deeper level for who she is, what her backstory is, what her goals are, what her dreams are. What are the things she's afraid of? What are the things that, make her really excited and passionate about life? Like, who are the people that are good for her? Who's not good for her? Like, there's so much to get into. We don't need to actually see her at work to understand how that could impact her life.
And that's actually something that like my husband and I talk about a lot. Like the other day, he was like, do you just realize how much sex there is on TV now? He said, well, we was growing up. He's like, what happened to back in the day where they used to just imply that it happened? He's like, they just go in the room and close the door and then you cut to breakfast the next morning. I was like, yeah, I said, it is getting a little bit over the top here. So I like that you brought that up about just implying that something happened without actually showing it. Because like I said, if I'm watching a show, I'm watching it because I want the story behind it. I want to know what's happening. I want to know about these characters' lives and what's going on. I don't need to see them in bed every 2 seconds. Like that's not doing anything for me or for the show.
Yeah. And I kind of equate it to, like, if you think of nutrition, right? Like, there's certain things that are just going to rot your teeth. They might taste good in the moment, but it's actually going to destroy you. And then there are other things that will actually, like, feed your soul, feed your body, where you're going to learn and you're going to grow. You're going to actually gain something from the experience of watching this, right? Like, some shows are so inspirational and they get you up and moving and doing something with your life. And then other shows, it's like, it gratifies something in the moment, and then you have to deal with feeling dirty later.
And it's like, I would rather see an extra 5 minutes of the character storyline or of the show than to see them in bed. I could have lived my whole life without seeing that.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think it kind of pulls away from where you can go with the story, because like I said, like a person is a whole person, right? You can get into deeper levels of who they are if you're not spending this time where it's like, oh, I got to make sure I've got some skin on the screen. I know that there are a lot of Hollywood like producers and whatever that will want that. Like, they might look at a script and say, okay, well, we need to add something in here. Let's put some skin on this in this scene or whatever. And and that's part of where we're not even teaching people how to write for that kind of producer anyway. Like, the amazing thing right now is that the independent film industry is busting wide open. Like, the films that are being made, the amount of, like, the type of technology that's out there right now, and the creativity that independent producers can use to be able to create things that do not look like low budget. They're looking for great content, because it all starts with a good story. If you don't have a good story, it doesn't matter how great your cinematography is. People are going to yawn.
Earlier in the episode, you said that you all were in Mexico and you kind of travel around a bit. Was the traveling with like teaching the courses, or is it to get inspiration for something that you're writing, or is that pitching to producers, or kind of a mixture of them all?
Okay, so we decided, I'm actually originally from Canada. Okay. So we decided to sell everything and move to Mexico so that we could have lower, like, our bills would be next to nothing. Like, our rent is $200 a month, right? And then
really,
yeah. So that's where we're like, okay, that way we can just focus on building the business. We don't have to focus on getting an income right away. Because when you start out building a business, you don't immediately start making the wage that you're wanting to make, right? Like, you have to pour stuff back into the business in order to continue to grow it. And so we thought, if we're in a place where we can afford to live without having to worry about making money for the first year, then let's just do all of that. And we're going to put everything into building this business. So that's our home base. Most of the time we've been there. But sometimes we travel, whether it's sometimes to visit family, like we've been back to Canada to visit there. And I went to a film festival while I was there, and it turned out, actually, I didn't even realize this film festival was on until one of my friends told me. And I actually had I had a project in the film festival because there were students from that university that contacted me and asked if they could use one of my screenplays so that they could, make a short film with it. And so I got to go, and they did a great job. It was a lot of fun, and I won a couple of awards for that one. That was fun. And then we've been to Denver for a conference, Florida.
Which is harder, writing a movie or writing a book?
Okay, so that all is going to boil down to how your own brain works. Okay. So for me, like I mentioned earlier, I like that there's more white on the page for a script. So for me, it's easier to write a screenplay because one of the things is it feels less daunting. It's a smaller project because you think of how many pages are in a book, and every page is full of words. So in a screenplay, it's going to be like a feature film is anywhere from 90 pages to 120 pages. And that's because each page it equals out to 1 minute of screen time on average.
Okay.
So a 90-page screenplay is going to be more or less a 90-minute movie.
Okay.
So if you think about that, like, okay, I just have to write 90 pages and there's not very many words on the page. You want to read the book version of that movie? That's going to be like probably 3-4 times that. Yes. Like it's just, there's a lot more words. So for me, in a screenplay, it's easier because of that. And also I just get into the basic details. It's more like you're creating a blueprint than you are a story, even though there's a story within the blueprint. Okay. Because what you're doing with a script is you're actually, you're giving everybody what they need to bring a story to life. So the actors have their lines, the directors understand where the action is going. The set design understands what kind of sets they need to work on or build or whatever. And so everything is in there for anybody who's actually making the project. All of that information is in there, and it's not cluttered with additional information. So for example, if I talk about a character who walked into the room, I don't talk about what she's wearing unless what she's wearing is necessary to know for the scene itself. So let's say if she's going on a blind date and she said that she would be wearing a red hat, well, then she has to wear the red hat, and I need to make mention of that. Okay. But if there's nothing to do with her wardrobe for, in that scene, I need to just leave that out and leave that job up to the wardrobe designer because that's that person's job.
Okay, that makes sense, because when you're reading a book, you're trying to get the visual. Like if you don't tell me in the book that she's wearing a red hat and she walked into the room wearing a red hat, then I have no clue what she walked into the room wearing. But if I'm watching it on film, then obviously I can see her walking into the room with the red hat. So I never really thought about it like that it's condensing down, because there is so much that you can leave out due to the fact that it's already visual and people don't have to create the visual image in their head. So,
mm-hmm. And then also because it's such a group effort, the people who are doing the production, so for example, the wardrobe people and the people who are doing the set, people who are like developing the color schemes, like all of that, they're all working together to develop these characters and to develop the set and to do it within a framework of color. And because if you watch movies, you'll see that there are themes, color themes all throughout. Like some movies have a lot of color that pops off the screen. Right. And then other movies, it seems like it's not technically in black and white, but it sure looks like there's a lot of black and white in this, right. Or a lot of gray tones or earth tones. Like there's just all the different themes, right? Like, but all of it is very well thought out, but that's not my job. I can create a tone emotionally throughout the screenplay. And then they interpret that to be whatever they think that should look like on the screen.
Cool. Thank you, Alexa. I love behind the scenes stuff. So
Yeah, me too.
this is just been, I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Like I'm always on IMDb when I'm looking up something, or I want to know where all the bloopers were. I want to know all the history with trying to find the actor for it or the actress for it and how this changed. So so I have a lot of movie facts and random stuff about shows and movies floating around in my head. I don't know what I'm ever gonna do with them. Maybe I'll go to a trivia night one night about like movies or TV shows or something like that. But it's there if I ever need it. So
there you go.
Yes. So my last question for you, what advice or tips would you like to share to someone who is looking to get into screenwriting, or maybe somebody who already is and they're struggling with it?
Okay. Yeah. That's the thing is if you've been trying for a while and you're not making headway, then it's really important to find somebody who is further along in the process than you to help you figure out what's not working. And if you're just wanting to get started and you don't want to waste time, then, same thing, find someone who is already where you want to be. So mentorship is a really important part of, I would say even any kind of business or entrepreneurship or whatever, finding somebody who's already where you want to be and letting them help you find the path. You're probably going to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that they had to suffer through, because they're going to tell you, look out for this, look out for that, do this instead of that. This is going to get you there faster. This is where you're not going to waste your money. You know what I mean? So
right.
If you want to check into what we're doing, like I encourage people to go to writemyscript.academy. That is a landing page that we have where you can choose, like, are you a new writer? Are you a teenager who wants to learn how to write? Or do you have a book you want to turn into a movie? Okay. And then they can download a free PDF according to whichever one they are. And then that kind of will start them on the process of helping them to understand what kind of things to consider, what options they have available for education. And we do offer classes, screenwriting foundation classes. I also offer one-to-one mentorship. So if you're already a screenwriter and you're like, I don't know why it's not working, we can do a one-to-one. I can read through your stuff and then I can point out to you what's working and what's not working so that you know what you need to work on.
Awesome. Well, again, I just thank you so much for being on the podcast, for reaching out to me. I loved all of the insider information and just hearing different things and learning about the whole screenwriting process, because that's not even something that I like generally think about when watching a movie or watching a TV show until like something happens and I'm like, that's what the writers did. But for the most part, I'm not really thinking about the writers. I'm just sitting there and I'm watching it and enjoying it and not even thinking about all the stuff that had to happen just even before it could go into production. So thank you so much. And before you go, will you please tell all my listeners where they can find you and where they can find Family Friendly Screenwriting Academy at?
For sure. So my name is Jaclyn Whitt. You can find me on Facebook if you want to follow my journey. We're also on YouTube if you want to search for Family Friendly Screenwriting Academy. I do make some videos that, I get into little tips and stuff like that, especially for authors that want to, find out how to turn their book into a movie. So I've got some stuff that I've started there. And I would say, like, we're on Instagram also, but I mean, if you search for Family Friendly Screenwriting Academy, and you'll find us. Or you can just go to writemyscript.academy, download any of the PDFs, and you'll be in our mailing system. So then when we're mailing out, like, hey, we've got this opportunity, you'll know what's coming up.
And I will make sure to link that along with the sitcom that you told me about, and then the page to follow along the journey of your screenplay. So I will link all of that.
Thank you for listening. Please make sure to follow and rate the podcast whenever you listen.